Open social for me, Shiva. Okay. Good morning, 1, 2, 3. Mic testing 1, 2, 3. Good morning. Post. Starting. Coming. Good morning. Good morning, all the invitees and guests for one-day international seminar is being organized by Faculty of Social Sciences, Department of History, Dr. B.R. Ambedkar Open University on Ambedkar, Democracy and Nationalism. We are celebrating part of Indian 75-year celebrations, the democracy of Indian independence, on the name of Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav, call given by Government of India. Part of that we are celebrating in Dr. B.R. Ambedkar Open University. It is my proud privilege to welcome all our guests and invitees for today's function. May I now request today's chief guest, Dr. Raj Shekhar, IAS, Additional Chief Secretary to Government of Haryana. Please come on to the stage and occupy the chair. Also, I request our Honorable Vice Chancellor, Professor K. Sitaram Rao Garu, who is the President of today's function. Kindly come on to the stage and occupy the chair, sir. It is my honor to welcome today's keynote speaker, Professor Lakshman D. Satya, Professor, Department of History, Lock Haven University of Pennsylvania, United States of America. He will be joining through online. We welcome you, sir, once again for online international seminar. It is my proud privilege to welcome today's seminar director, Professor E. Sudharani Garu, Director Academic, and also Seminar Director. Also, I invite Professor Vaddanam Srinivas Garu, kindly come onto the stage and occupy the chair. Yes? Yeah. And also, I request today's guests of honor, Professor A.V.N. Reddy Garu, Registrar of the University, and Professor Adapa Satyanarayana Garu, kindly come onto the stage and occupy the chair. We welcome you, sir, once again. Now I request Dr. G. Dayakar Garu, kindly present a bouquet to our today's chief guest, Dr. Raj Shekhar Garu. I think that's it, yeah. Thank you, Raj Shekhar Garu. Thank you very much. Also, I request Arna Garu, Madam Arna Garu, kindly present a bouquet to today's President of the function and our Honorable Vice Chancellor, Professor K. Sitaram Rao Garu. Now I request to Sarita Garu, kindly present a bouquet to Adapa Satyanarayana Garu. Thank you, Satyanarayana sir. Now I request Sri Dr. Lakshman Garu, kindly present a bouquet to our Academic Director and Seminar Director, Professor E. Sudharani Garu. Now I request Avinash Garu, kindly present a bouquet to our Registrar, Dr. A.V.N. Reddy Garu. Thank you, Registrar sir. Now I request to Dayakar Garu, kindly present a bouquet to our co-director of the seminar, Vaddanam Srinivas Garu. Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. We recognize that all the directors of the various branches, heads of the branches, and office bearers of various service associations and faculty of various faculty members and non-teaching staff members are present in this August gathering. Thank you very much for your presence. Now I request all the dignitaries on the dais kindly proceed for the lighting of the lamp and offer the floral tributes to Dr. B.R. Ambedkar portrait. Thank you, sir and madam. Thank you very much. Now I request our Honorable Vice Chancellor, Professor K. Sitaramaravu Garu, BRAOU, and President of today's program, kindly conduct the further proceeding. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Venu. On behalf of Dr. B.R. Ambedkar Open University, and also on my personal behalf, I welcome you all to this August gathering and very important day for us. We are conducting a very important international seminar on a very important topic and contextual also. So, as you know, especially there is a lot of planning went on to organize this program. Really, I appreciate the efforts made by our Faculty of Social Sciences and also Department of History and other colleagues, faculty members, and other staff of the university who really involved with a lot of commitment to organize this program today. I once again appreciate and congratulate them. respected invitees on the dais, especially chief guest of this today's inaugural session, Dr. Raj Shekhar, IAS, Additional Chief Secretary of Government of Haryana, and also is very popularly known person among the intellectuals, academicians, and also official circles, especially Ambedkar Is also. And really, I'm very fortunate enough to meet him today on this occasion. And he is known as a motivator for so many persons who changed themselves and became real social civil servants and also social service persons in this society and in our two states also, AP and Telangana. And another important guest of honor, Professor Adapa Satyanarayana, former head of the Department of History, Usmania University, and he is good friend, well-wisher, and guide to our social sciences and also especially to Department of History. And today's keynote addressee, who joined online from USA, Pennsylvania, Professor Lakshman D. Satya, who is also very popular professor teacher working in Lock Haven University, Pennsylvania, USA. So apart from our Honorable Registrar, who is here on the dais, Professor Sudharani, Director Academic, who is the brain behind this program, Professor Vadyanam Srinivas, Head Department of History, and various invitees, respected invitees and academicians came from different parts of the country, especially Professor Narendra Kumar, Professor Tirumali, and also Professor from Kerala, the Professor Dasanji, and so many other officials who came here to meet, especially Dr. Raj Shekhar. And I welcome them who came here to not only to participate and to meet their good friend, and also our faculty members, Dean Faculty of Science, and also other teachers, non-teaching staff, and research scholars and friends. I welcome once again all of them to this important meeting. You know very well the topic of the day, why it is so important. It has most contextual and relevance to present day situation also. That is Ambedkar, democracy and nationalism. There lot of seminars have taken place on philosophy of Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, freedom movement and his role, and role of Dr. B.R. Ambedkar on constitution formation, and also democracy and Dr. B.R. Ambedkar. But especially today, we have added another important dimension to his ideology and also his speeches, we have added nationalism also. Now, nationalism is very important dimension today because now nationalism in India is becoming with the different colors. It is coming up. You know very well, it is mixed with religion and also patriotism. But what kind of religion, what kind of ideology behind it? There is a lot of controversy. And at the same, it is being debated, opposed. A lot of continuous debate is going on. But in this context, it is also necessary to understand really what is nationalism and what type of nationalism we require at this present context. That is also one very important aspect to be deliberated. And also we have to come to an clear-cut understanding which should help us to take appropriate social action to change the context of the society and polity. That is my understanding. That is the reason we have taken up this topic for the discussion. And at the same time, we are also planning to some more activities in the context of Azadi Ka Amritotsav and some more seminars like participation of women in freedom struggle and freedom struggle in princely states like Hyderabad, and also freedom struggle before Gandhi and after Gandhi. These are the some, and at the same time, the unsung heroes of the freedom struggle. These are the some of the most important areas need to be brought to the light, and they should be thoroughly discussed and deliberated to have a proper understanding and to keep up the values of freedom struggle and also constitution. So that is the reason we must revisit the freedom struggle and constitution formation and also the present context and how we have to think in a new way to understand the present polity and society and in which direction it is going and how we should involve ourselves to change the misleading and misdirection of the polity and society in the present context. So as you know very well, our university, it is not only named after Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, it is clearly committed in its vision to the social philosophy of education of Dr. B.R. Ambedkar. Not only our aim or objective is not only providing inclusive and quality education to the lowest state of the society who are unreached in the society through education, higher education. And at the same time, we will give inclusive education with the quality, with the lower costs. This is the major social philosophical vision of the Dr. B.R. Ambedkar. We have wedded to that philosophy and philosophical outlook and serving the society in the area of education since 4 decades. Our university is the first open university in India. And we have really contributed a lot to enhance the gross enrollment ratio of the higher education, and especially coming from the poor and rural background. That we can say very proudly that is our contribution to the society, especially to the then joint Andhra Pradesh and present Telangana also. 2 states. Even now, we are serving the 2 states as per the Bifurcation Act. We will serve up to 2024. Later, we don't know what happens. That is a different question. So coming to the topic of the today, I don't want to take much of your time. I also not made any deep study of Dr. B.R. Ambedkar on democracy and nationalism. The very well-known scholars are here to speak on that. But at the same time, just I try to share 1 or 2 points, some of my observations on this aspect. Dr. B.R. Ambedkar is very much influenced by the ideas of the slogans of French Revolution. That is equality, liberty, and fraternity. And continuously these aspects influenced his thinking and writings also. And at the same time, he tried to understand the Indian society from domination, subordination of the caste angle. That is one of the very important, crucial dimension he added to the understanding of the Indian society and social relations and social change. So that is the reason he emphasized on bringing the casteless society. Unless caste go, this society will not go forward. So that basic framework has reflected in nationalism also. So this inclusive character of his thinking, especially poorer sections, highly oppressed sections of the society, Dalits, he tried to uplift them and bring to the level of the egalitarian relations on par with the dominant caste. So that is then only the democracy and nationalism will survive. That is linked up with the upbringing of the Dalits in our Indian society. Then only the real nationalism and the real democracy will survive, and the constitution will also survive. Otherwise, it will be very difficult, and we unforeseen changes may also come. That was his understanding. So, with this brief presidential remarks, I request to take forward the agenda of the inaugural session. Now I request for Professor Sudharani, Director of the seminar, the Director Academic, to briefly speak about the main theme of the seminar of today's topic. Thank you very much. Thank you once again. Thank you one and all.
Thank you, sir. Respected Vice Chancellor, Sitaram Rao Garu, our esteemed chief guest of today's international seminar on Ambedkar Democracy and Nationalism, Dr. Raj Shekhar Garu, and IAS, Additional Chief Secretary to Government of Haryana, Labour Department, and our Professor Kadapa Satyanarayana sir, my guru and supervisor also for my studies, and a great intellectual who has been contributing a lot to the thought of modern Telangana as well as the Ambedkar movement also. Professor Kadapa Satyanarayana sir, guest of honor, our registrar Event Reddy Garu, HOD head of the department, Padanam Srinivas, our colleague in the department, Dayakar, all the directors, invitees, and Lakshman D. Satya, the keynote address, who is kind enough to accept our invitation to be with us. Putting up the odd hours, now it is 1 + 1 to 2 in the midnight, but he's very patient enough to be with us on this occasion on our request. Thank you so much, Professor Satya, for being with us today. And all the directors, deans, faculty members, invitees, there are some resource persons, like, that traveled all along from Delhi, Kerala. Narendra Kumar, Professor Narendra Kumar, Chairperson CPS, and Professor Yashodat Alani. He's from Arts and Aesthetics, and Professor Dasan, Manarikal Dasan from Calicut and Kannur University Research, and various in K.K. Rajagaru, I could see his presence over here, and all the invitees who are who just with a short notice of time, all the research scholars. I am always happy about their presence in our activities, and today's event particularly I wanted all the research scholars to be involved. Because this theme is very carefully chosen, Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, Democracy and Nationalism, in the context of not only Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav, but also in the making of Indian, there are several questions around Indian nationalism, democracy, and there are certain aspects which are being, the kind of challenges we face for today's the functioning of democracy. So this is very useful event until the evening. The very power-packed intellectual presence and your participation is solicited. Our Department of History, I'll just few lines about it, started in way back when university started, offering UG, PG, and MPhil PhD programs. And also nearly 30,000 students, learners enroll every year, because out of the 1 lakh and learners. So offering in not only Telugu medium, but Telugu, English, and Urdu mediums also. They are catering the needs of the Urdu community. And the department introduced the CBCS system, and several courses, like, the veterans like Kane Panikar, Sarvepal Gopal, they're all involved in our designing the courses in the beginning. So Professor Sarojini Regani, Vaklavan Ramkrishna, Adapa Sachilan sir, and Radhakrishna Sharma, and Vaikuntham Garu, Session, VM Reddy, Somsandar, all the veterans in all the different fields of the history are involved in this. About the seminar, I'll be just brief enough. We thought about conducting this international event as a part of the 40 years of completion of 40 years of our Ambedkar University. Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, the architect and the maker of the modern India, Gail Ahmed, a famous historian, she observes that the development of Ambedkarism in India can be seen as an expression of the worldwide democratic revolution that had grown out of the experiences and situations. He is the beacon of the democratic revolution in India, and not only in India, but also shown the way when we talk about the personal liberty, equality, and fraternity, which has taken, he himself wrote that he has taken not from French Revolution, but from Buddhism. So this Ambedkar being the architect of India, everyone knows about him being the architect of Indian Constitution. But what is his vision? His vision is to future of the people in independent India. He carefully thought about the future vision, the vision of democracy, which he encompasses the political, social, economic, and not only the political, but also he talks about the social and political. And without social and economic equality, political equality will not survive. That's what he sees that. And his insightful contribution of the concept of democracy transcended the barriers of the liberalism. Another crucial feature of Babasaheb Ambedkar's conception of democracy is that it of social transformation and human progress rooted in rationality and scientific approach. Outlook. So studying his writings and initiatives, when we look at his writings, because he's a voracious reader, contributed thousands and thousands of pages on Indian democracy, the status of the people of India and all. His writings from 1919 to 1956, till his death, the last day of his death also, he was writing the Buddha and Introduction to Buddha and Dharma. So these writings confirm the passion for democracy and also provides the concern for democracy. And starting from the advocacy for universal adult franchise and representation of marginalized communities, right from Southborough Committee in 1919 to Simon Commission and roundtable conferences. He's the only Indian leader who participated in all the three Indian roundtable conferences. And to his writings and condition of the successful working of democracy, the write-up in 1952, and Prospect of Democracy, another writing in 1956. So all these writings reflect his ideas of nationalism. He has seen nationalism as a different, his outlook of nationalism is different from the other leaders. So nationalist leadership laid excessive emphasis on the political freedom, but Babasaheb Ambedkar visualized nationalism as a spiritual phenomenon. So his vision was to build a democratic, inclusive India, just now our Vice Chancellor said. So his idea of national building or nationalism is rooted in the democratic constitutionalism. So this is what the pertinent issue which we are going to discuss today. The specific objective of our today's international seminar is to discuss and deliberate on Babasaheb Ambedkar's perspectives on multitudes which are existing in India, situations and conditions, explore the nationalism within the constitutional framework, and analyze the functionaries of the society in terms of democratic equality, social, economic, gender, psychological, and cultural aspects. So the theme is also, the 3 sessions are there. After this introduction session, inaugural session, 1 session is there, which Dr. Gajendra Nayatre from Germany, Wittenberg University, is going to address us online. And after this lunch break, we'll have a lunch break, and after that, Professor Yeshadata Aloni and Professor Narendra Kumar will address us on different themes of democracy and nations. And valedictory, Professor Manarikal Dasan is going to address the valedictory address, give the valedictory address, and Professor Limbatri is going to be the chief guest. This is precisely about the program. Please do stay with us throughout the day and enjoy the intellectual feast, which is going to give us by all the invitees. Thank you so much for being with us. Thank you once again.
Next item on the agenda is, I request Professor Adanam Srinivas to speak and introduce the chief guest of today, speaker, and also address Lakshman Satya and chief guest Dr. Raj Shekhar today to the audience.
Honorable Vice Chancellor, Professor K.C. Taramuragaru, today's chief guest of this seminar, Raj Shekhar, Dr. Raj Shekhar Garu, guest of honor, Professor Adapa Satyana Garu, our University Registrar, Dr. A.V.N. Reddy Garu, and today's seminar's director and our University's academic director, Professor Sudharani Garu, dignitaries of the dais. Good morning to you all. It gives immense pleasure to introduce our today's chief guest, Dr. Raj Shekhar Undru, IAS, belongs to the 1990 batch of the IAS allotted to the Haryana cadre. He was under trainee in Sirsa, worked in districts as ADC in Panipat, Kurukshetra, and as DC in Mahendragarh and Fatehbad. Director Information Technology, Government of Haryana, and also Special Secretary, PWD, Irrigation and Buildings and Roads. He was in Government of India for 10 years and Director, Ministry of Social Justice and Empowerment, Joint Secretary in Department of Pharmaceuticals, and also Joint Secretary in Ministry of Agriculture, Deputy Director General, Regional Office. The Unique Identification Authority of India, Government of India, Delhi, Chandigarh. Dr. Raj Shekhar Undru is the author of Ambedkar, Gandhi, and Patel, The Making of India's Electoral System, Bloomsbury. He has a doctorate on Ambedkar's electoral ideas from the National Law School of Indian University, Bangalore. He has written extensively on Ambedkar, caste, untouchability, Dalit history, and literature in EPW, Indian Express, New Indian Express, and other journals like the Hindu, Business Line, Times of India, Hindustan Times, Economic Times, Mail Today, the Tribune, the Outlook magazine, etc., including editing Dalit Millennium for the Pioneer in 2001. He is a recipient of the Dr. Ambedkar Ratan Award and the Dr. Ambedkar Prabuddha Bharat Peace Prize. Thank you, sir. Thank you very much for attending this seminar. And I would like to introduce another keynote addressee, Professor Lakshman D. Satya. He is currently full professor at Lock Haven University of Pennsylvania, USA. Educated in Usmania University in Hyderabad, JNU in Delhi, University of Illinois at Chicago, Columbia University in New York City, University of Wisconsin-Madison, and Tufts University in Boston. He has 30 years of academic experience in USA. His area of interest, specialization, and publication in modern South Asian history, agrarian, ecology, political economy, nationalist movement, British Empire, Indian Ocean, Islam, focus on the Deccan region. He has published 4 books, 5 book chapters, 16 journal articles, 10 newspaper editorials, 5 review essays, 32 book reviews, 2 book endorsement captions, and 5 peer-reviewed journal articles. He has been honored with 16 grants and awards, including the latest Professor M. Akhtar Ali Prize by the Indian History Congress for the best paper published in the Proceedings Value of the 77th session of the Indian History Congress held in Thiruvananthapuram, Kerala, India in December 2016. Thank you, sir. Thank you very much for giving this talk.
Thank you, Srinivas, for introducing the chief guest and also keynote address of this very inaugural session. Now I request our guest of honor, Professor to give his brief message. Distinguished dignitaries on the dais, the President of the today's function, Professor Sitaram Rao Garu, Honorable Vice Chancellor, today's chief guest, Professor Raj Shekhar, Dr. Raj Shekhar Undru, a great Ambedkarite scholar and a dynamic bureaucrat. Professor Sudharani, the director of the seminar, also my doctoral student, Vadanam Srinivas, Registrar of this University of Ambedkar Open University, AVN Reddy, distinguished invitees, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen. This is an opportunity that is given to me to be present on an important topic of today, actually. The theme, Ambedkar, Democracy and Nationalism, very, very contextual. In the context in which this nation is now going through an unending kind of a dialogue with regard to these two important concepts, democracy and nationalism. We all know Dr. B.R.M. Babasaheb Ambedkar propounded an alternative nationalism in terms of secular nationalism. And a democracy which is for the upliftment of the downtrodden of this nation. I just recall, I don't want to take your time, I just recall a great Ambedkarite of this part of the country, Kusuma Dharmana, very beautifully summed up this Ambedkarite concept. He said, Samanatva mein swatantra. Equality is independence. So that shows the inclusiveness of the concept. That's what this nation, particularly from the point of view of the downtrodden and subordinate, are striving to achieve. And the nationalism and the democracy that is presented today is a long way to go. So therefore, today's deliberations will clarify some of these issues. And once again, I thank Professor Sitaramana Garu and his staff for giving me this opportunity to be present here. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Sitaramana. Really, I'm very happy to welcome here. Now I request our beloved staff, Dr. Ibn Reddy, to open this message.
Respected dignitaries on the dais, and who are joining through Zoom, particularly resource persons, scholars, and other invitees. Good morning to all. So I congratulate first Department of History for initiating the relevant theme, which are now discussing a lot in the society about nationalism, democracy, and what contextual issues, whether it is relevant or changing or inclusiveness, what actually idea of the Ambedkar is really succeeded by the present governments. So anyhow, it's a very interesting topic. The deliberations which are going here is most useful to the further direction to the academicians, particularly to concentrate on the research, historians, not only historians, as well as administrators also. So really is a very, very interesting topic, ma'am, for choosing in this present era. And also, I appreciate the persons who are coming here, because today is the very weather, the bad weather already declared by the government of India as well as the state governments. So anyhow, they are taking a lot of pain for attending here. As a rest of this university, I appreciate the people for their interest in involving the activity of this particular seminar. Anyhow, I expect the good deliberations and proceedings from this conference, the seminar for this day. I appreciate the person for coming a long way, Dr. Raj Shekhar, Unru, who are familiar in Ambedkarism and Ambedkar ideas and focusing on various writings. Sir, we are awaiting about your lecture here, and thank you for giving this opportunity. Thank you, Mama.
Thank you, Dr. I request our chief guest, Dr. Raj Shekhar, to give his address.
Thank you so much, Vice Chancellor Garu. It's a great honor to be here amongst you. I sincerely thank the Dr. B.R. Ambedkar Open University, especially Professor Sudharan Garu, for choosing a very apt topic, Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav, and the topic is Ambedkar Democracy and Nationalism, a perfect match. And it's a beautiful day, it's a nice day, Registrar Garu, it's a very nice day. It's a beautiful rainy day, fantastic weather in Hyderabad. Thank you very much, Professor Vaddanam Srinivas Rao Garu, great Professor Satyanarayan Garu, Registrar Garu AVR and Reddy. My friends here, as the VC said, that they all come to see me, Siddhoji Garu, Sripati Ramudu, Professor Santosh Rao, and of course the speakers today, and Ravi, my friend, Aloni, Professor Aloni, Narendra and Gajendran are all, we are our old time in JNU guys. But they took the academic path, I took a different path. but came back to academics. Thank you so much. And the topic is so apt that I'd like to touch upon an aspect of Dr. B.R. Ambedkar's conceptualization and idea of India, where we look at the point of nationalism. So I like to take you back. This is a Department of History seminar. So let's get into history. During the second roundtable conference, 16th September 1931, Dr. B.R. Ambedkar was participating in the Federal Structure Committee, trying to evolve the Government of India Act 19, which later on came in 1935. There, he locked heads with Maharaja of Bikaner on the aspect of what would happen to the princely states or the native states, they used to call them at that time. What would happen to them if they want to form or enter into the Indian Federation? And he also uses the word, very importantly, what if they want to join a future Indian state? I'm talking about 1931. Now, there is no Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel here in 1931. Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel, in his own way, was in a part of the national movement led by Mahatma Gandhi. But the entire understanding, the constitutional understanding, the procedural understanding of what would happen to the Indian native states was even Dr. B.R. Ambedkar was aware of it in 1931. And he fought with the Maharaja of Bikaner. There is a Chamber of Princes. He was the head of the Chamber of Princes and he was a part of that. And what happened then? I'd like to actually mention what he said. He said, out of the 454 native princely states, all these Maharajas, he said, out of 562, 454 have less than 1,000 square miles and less than 1 lakh population. Means they're even smaller than a British India district. He said, what kind of Maharajas are you? Then he says, there are an average Indian district was 4,000 square miles and the population was 8 lakhs in those days. Then he says, 30 among the 562 Indian states are less than 1 square mile. Chote Maharaja, small Maharaja. Even then that guy is a Maharaja. He would have 1 gun salute, 10 gun salute, whatever gun salute. They have all kinds of titles. And he says in Surat district itself, there are 3 states. In one district, there are 3 states whose revenue is 100 rupees. He says, what will happen to all you people? So he was ridiculing them. He was ridiculing the Maharajas, said, what kind of a Maharajas and princely states you go around as a native states and you say that, we want our own privileges. So Maharaja Bikaner was a part of that Federal Structure Committee. He said, the states are independent. If they want to join the Indian Federation, they can join. They don't want to join, they don't want to join. He said, what would they do? He spoke in that committee and said, I will put a rule. And he was quoting an analysis by an author called G.V. Gundappa in 31. And that book was also written in 31. And he picks up this data from an Anaksha. And he says, I'll put a rule. If a native Indian state wants to join the Indian Federation, then I will put a rule of minimum revenue and a minimum area. The rest of the people, you go and merge with India. I'm talking about 1931, trying to point out the aspects of Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, where he even foresaw the natural and normal, easier integration of the native states into the future Indian Union. Now let's go ahead to the Declaration of Independence. When Declaration of Independence happened, and the cabinet mission mentioned on 12th May 1946, the statement of cabinet mission was very confusing. Fast forward to 1946. They said the Indian states have the freedom to be independent or join the Indian Union. Dr. B.R. Ambedkar got very angry. So he issued a statement, a very long statement, which was published by a lot of newspapers at that point in time. When I, as a student like Adapa Satyanarayan Garu and Sudharani Garu and all of you, trying to dig the National Archives, I found that statement in the folder of Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel. He took it, made a paper cutting, and it was in his papers. What did Dr. B.R. Ambedkar say? It was because Hyderabad, our very state, where we are, declared independence. And Travancore Maharaja also said we want to be independent. And also two more states in Gujarat, Junagadh. So what cabinet mission said is that you can be independent. What was the point of that aspect? It's about paramountcy. Paramountcy and the suzerainty are two words where British held sway over the native states. So the cabinet mission said the paramountcy would lapse once India becomes independent. The paramountcy would lapse. So Dr. B.R. Ambedkar came in and analyzed that entire aspects of the cabinet mission. He firstly says the paramountcy or the power of the British to control the native states on aspects of their administration, he said would not lapse. On what aspect? He said paramountcy is held by the crown. Crown is the king. The British kingdom, the crown is the king. The paramountcy would not lapse because he said any right of the king can be abdicated to somebody but cannot be lapsed. He made an argument. He quoted the British law and the British constitutional law. So he says the crown is the one, the British king or the crown is the one who controls the paramountcy. Then he brings in the Indian state. By the time when the interim government of Jawaharlal Nehru comes in, India attained from a direct rule of the British, India attained a form of dominion status. So India was a dominion status nation under the British crown. Sir, for me, I had to understand and learn. For you, all these things are very easy. So he said, when you are a dominion, he compared with 3-4 countries at that point in time. He said, what is a dominion status equal to? He says dominion status is what Australia was having, New Zealand was having, Canada and Ireland were having. The crown would be a titular head to the country, and the dominion parliament or the dominion government would replace the British parliament. If the British was directly ruling India through its agent or Governor General, then the British Parliament would have a say in that law. This was the interpretation given by Dr. B.R. Ambedkar in 1946. He said, now what is the dominion government? Is an Indian government. Indian dominion status is the Indian government. He brings in the British constitutional law. He says that if any government of India gives an advice to the crown, that is an acceptable advice. Means, if the government of India or the dominion government of India led by Nehru at that time says that the native states have to integrate into India. If the crown says no and they repeat the advice, the kind of advice we give to the President of India now, the crown will have to accept the advice. That was the inside of Dr. B.R. Ambedkar's aspect of nationalism and integration of states. So I'm talking about 1931, where there was no Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel, there was no Dominion government, his foresight, and I'm bringing it to 1946. He says the paramountcy cannot lapse, and a paramountcy would be transferred. That means the control of the British had over the native Indian states would be automatically transferred to what is called a successor state. The successor state was India. Then what would happen if India would become independent? India would become an independent nation, but also would be the successor state. He brought in that kind of a fantastic legal acumen. Then he also challenged the native states and the rulers of the time. He said, there is a very important aspect of responsible government. He brings in a new aspect of responsible government. What is a responsible government in a native state? It is not that the king sits and he brings 10 cronies of his and forms a cabinet and runs a government. He says a responsible government in any native Indian state, princely state, has to be an elected government. He was arguing in the Federal Structure Committee in 31 because every prince wanted a seat in the Central Legislative Assembly of 1931. They all wanted seat. Okay, I'm a native prince. I want one member of parliament in the Central Legislative Assembly. He said, nothing doing. Who are you? You are a 1 kilometer, 10 kilometer, 100 kilometer square kilometer kind of a state. In Rajasthan, we see, sir, you go and see, everybody says I was a former prince. And he will write a name, I am Kumar so-and-so. You know, and some Maharaja, some title they will have. There were hundreds of kings, small principalities in states like Rajasthan and other areas. He just chopped them off in one statement in 1946. He said, you can't go anywhere but to integrate. And he challenged the bigger states. He also told in the public, through a public statement, that the Diwans who are advising the Travancore and Hyderabad princely states, that you will be fools to, he used that word, you will be foolish to advise your princely states to be independent. Because he said the only way at that point in time, any princely state would go to the international forum was United Nations. He said, United Nations will not accept their contention because they did not have responsible governments. See, he even cut their ideas of going to the United Nations. And that was the aspect of Dr. B.R. Ambedkar's understanding of integration of this country. And after that, when he became the law minister, again in the same Hyderabad, when Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel, who was the home minister, decided to take army action, it was said that Dr. B.R. Ambedkar advised him, don't call it army action because they will get an opportunity to go to international fora. That is between two nations. You call it police action. That is why Hyderabad action was called a police action. Sir, I conclude here. I just want to touch upon this aspect of history. It is a beautiful, brilliant idea of Professor Sudharani Garu to discuss this aspect, this entire subject and topic. We have fantastic professors here to take it ahead. Thank you so much. I'm honored to be here amongst you today. And it's a beautiful weather in Hyderabad. Thank you so much.
So thanks very much, Dr. Raj Shekhar. Really, you invited us down to Dr. Ambedkar. There is no other. That's his idea. It's the idea of incorporating Article 3 saved us. Yes. Out of this stuff. Andhra colonial us. I want to see the harsh part maybe. It's a situation. So I am very happy, sir. Once again, now I request for keynote addressing Lakshman Satya. Really is waiting a long time for him USA. He's from Department of History of Lock Haven University, Pennsylvania. Lock Haven. Now I request him to give this keynote address to this inaugural session. Thank you, sir. Please join.
Okay. Let me first thank Professor Usha Rani and Professors Arpa Satyanarayana and the organizers of this wonderful seminar and for the invitation to present the keynote address. It's really a great pleasure to be here and glad that you were all able to join. It's way past Mind's peak performance time of 2 a.m. here on the other side of the world. And the moon is shining bright. The weather is really nice. Sky is clear beyond the tall pine trees. So please bear with me. I'll try to do my best. Since the topic of Ambedkar, democracy and nationalism is so vast, I thought it's better to be comprehensive in this presentation, since I'm a historian by training. Well, it's only over the past 20 to 30 years that the Dalit scholarship had produced an enormous body of literature in many fields of social sciences and humanities. This has added a whole new dimension to modern Indian historiography. Predominantly reflected in this literature is the personality of Ambedkar. The reason for this is that Ambedkar has left behind an enormous body of primary sources in the form of books, pamphlets, letters, newspaper articles, speeches, interviews, autobiography, editorials, you name it. And Usha Garu, while chatting to her just yesterday, informed me that it's now being digitized. A rich treasure trove of scholars and researchers to delve into his life and times. Scholars in India and across the world in many different disciplines have used the available primary sources to produce an equally enormous body of secondary writing on him. The study of these primary and secondary sources gives us a pretty good idea of who Ambedkar is and what he did. So, who is this historical character that lived in the first half of the last century? Let me quickly give you a brief overview of his life with which you are probably already familiar. Born and raised in rural India with traditional education at home and in the village school in central India in 1891, late 19th century. Despite the conditions that were quite challenging while he was growing up. And this is just an understatement, I would say. But I'll be very brief. He got a taste of higher education in the biggest urban center of British India, studied at the top Elphinstone College in Bombay city, then educated at the top school in the biggest city of the British Empire, London School of Economics, then picked up a highest degree of doctorate from the best university in the biggest city of US, in New York, Columbia, where I also had happened to attend. So this is the trajectory of his educational background, and all this was done between the ages of 25 to 30 years. So he was ready to go. What we have here is a well-rounded person who is groomed in the traditional village and colonial urban culture from Central and Western India, then exposure globally to the leading Western imperial nation, Britain, followed by the richest country in the world and the emerging superpower during World War I, the United States. Ambedkar thus had a well-rounded grounding in law, politics, economics, religion, and many, many other fields. He was a multidisciplinary, intellectual and activist. Now, in 40 years of his productive life, from 1916 to 1956, he produced an enormous body of material that shows that he was a multifaceted personality. He was a scholar, political activist, social reformer, religious critic, organizer, mobilizer, jurist, journalist, and he also had a vision about which I will talk in the end. Overall then, he was deeply rooted in Indian tradition and culture. Let's briefly take a panoramic look of his activities. Ambedkar began by organizing popular agitation for access to public space, like something as simple as drinking water for the untouchables, which was really a peaceful, non-violent protest against an oppressive caste Hindu practice, even though the atmosphere in which this event happened became quite violent. This is in reference to Mahad Satyagraha of 1927 in Nasik district. But even before this, he vehemently campaigned for separate electorates for the oppressed sections of the Indian society. Here he strongly engaged with the colonial establishment and the mainstream nationalist movement. He left no stone unturned by openly participating in representing the interest of the downtrodden of the society, a la facing the Southborough Committee 1919, Samian Commission 1930, attending all the 3 roundtable conferences that was mentioned earlier before by the speaker, 1930 to 32, Ramsay MacDonald's Communal Award, Government of India Act of 1935, and the election of 1937 that followed, going on to negotiations of 1946, 47 and beyond. Just look at the range of his activities here. Obviously, this was surely not a smooth ride. He ran into a lot of obstacles from the mainstream majority culture in the society. While staunchly promoting the cause of the lowest of the lowly, Ambedkar was also flexible enough to compromise with his demands. The Pune Pact of 1932 showed that saving lives is equally important while adhering to a cause, which means no cause is more important than lives. Or if the lives are lost, then what is the point in pursuing the cause? I guess you may be thinking where I'm getting at with this, right? So in other words, wasting precious life for a cause is futile and even dangerous because both are important. This was specifically pertaining to Gandhi's fast and the danger of violence to life it posed. So the fire and anger in him was never allowed to overpower the deeply humanistic aspect of his personality and the movement which he led. And this is very important characteristic of his, persona. And also his movement. It was always peaceful. Now, in terms of nation and nationalism, and this is going to be a bit controversial here, he said, it's basically a sentiment. That is, nationalism is basically a sentiment, an emotion, and an emotional attachment to a symbol or a creed or a faith or a belief in which an entire community uncompromisingly subscribes. Ambedkar saw this in the Muslim community of India as a homogeneous entity with a staunch belief in their holy book, Quran, their Prophet Muhammad, God Allah, and their long historical tradition that ran parallel to mainstream Hindu tradition, which means there was very little intercommunal contact between these two traditions. That's Ambedkar is saying this. There is no interdining, intermarriage, or prayers and rituals under the same roof, and so on. Ambedkar maintained that it also meant that the Muslim community in India is driven by a powerful religious sentiment, again, a nationalist, idea, for which the believers were willing to sacrifice their life in creating a homeland in which only Muslim rule over Muslims and non-Muslims are not permitted to rule over Muslims. Ambedkar goes on to say, this characteristic was so unique to Muslim community of India, which qualifies them to be a nation, and forcing them under a non-Muslim majority state would be totally undemocratic, because that would mean suppressing their desires and sentiments. He argues that a nation within a nation cannot exist without creating an explosive situation and exposing the people to the danger of large-scale violence. In other words, Ambedkar says a civil war must be avoided at all costs. Again, his humanistic, character of saving lives. So then what is a non-homogeneous composite society like India? Ambedkar says in such a society, there should be strong guarantees of constitutional safeguards for the depressed sections. His lifelong campaign and quest was for achieving precisely such guarantees that would empower the depressed classes and give them a voice. In other words, he was involved in organizing large-scale political agitations for securing constitutional rights for the oppressed classes, which took many different forms, some of which had already been mentioned, like separate electorates, communal award, reservations, Hindu Code Bill, etc. In post-colonial India's constitution, Ambedkar opted for a similar model of creating homogeneous states around languages. He maintained that Indian society created many different languages and many different cultures that developed around them. In other words, he says, India is a multilingual and multicultural society in which homogeneous states needs to be organized around languages and regions where these languages are spoken, because they create a homogeneous culture that would avoid conflict and tension. In 1936, Ambedkar made a major declaration. He said, I am not going to die a Hindu, even though I was born into it. For the next 20 years, he contemplated on it with astute study of various religions and religious traditions in India, before finally coming to a conclusive decision. Very broadly, then, he believed that Islam and Christianity were Abrahamic religion with genesis outside India, hence they were alien. Sikhism had limited regional roots in Punjab and hence lacked a universal application. Hinduism to him was fundamentally based on inequality, hence unacceptable. The only alternative creed that was left with deep roots in Indian indigenous tradition, and we all know what that was, which he opted as rational, secular, universal, humanistic, with an egalitarian ethos. Ambedkar also wrote and spoke extensively about industrialization, labor organization, position of women in Indian society, socialism, communism, revolution, agriculture, centralization of the economy. He was an economist by training, actually. Currency and physical system, parliamentary and electoral system, leadership qualities and governance, how to build a modern nation. And some scholars have argued that he even went beyond modernity itself. He also edited newspapers, founded political parties. I mean, the sheer range of his intellectual and physical activities is simply breathtaking. There's not enough time to analyze all these aspects of Ambedkar's activities and thoughts. So then, where does Ambedkar leave us today as scholars and researchers? Well, he leaves us with a license to critique. So let's use this license on Ambedkar. Firstly, reducing the entire gamut of 3,500 years of the so-called Hinduism to a single factor of caste, or a singular ideology of Hindutva, or the reading and burning of selective scriptures like Manu Dharma Shastra, exposes Ambedkar to the danger of marginalization from the mainstream society. We are historians, so we critically think. In fact, throughout his 40 years career, mentioned above, he suffered the trauma of marginalization and tried to escape from it by falling back on the same Indian tradition, albeit slightly differently, that is, transition or conversion from Hinduism to Buddhism. Secondly, was or is the Muslim community as homogeneous as Ambedkar surmised? This raises a lot of what-if questions, like the tension and the conflict within the Muslim communities between Shia, Sunnis, Ahmadiyas, serious ethnic differences among Muslims such as Baluchis, Sindhis, Pashtuns, Hazaras, Punjabis, and Kashmiri Muslims, to just name a few. Then finally, we all know what happened to East Pakistan in 1971. That is a Muslim majority state, and ongoing movement in Balochistan along the same lines. How about linguistic reorganization of states as homogeneous cultural entities? We all know how Telangana state came into existence in 2014 after a long drawn-out struggle starting way back in 1947. In fact, a similar movement has been going on in the Vidarbha region of Maharashtra, where ironically, Ambedkar's conversion took place in October 1956, just 2 months before his death. Diksha Bhumi in Nagpur today has a huge stupa under a pipal tree with a college nearby named after him. Quite a lovely place to visit, I think. Now, moving beyond the critique, let me conclude by looking at Ambedkar's vision that was mentioned at the beginning of this presentation. We can say that he lived in visionary times. Every mass leader during the colonial period was driven by this vision for the future. Going back to the 19th century, Syed Ahmed Khan, Tilak, Gokhale, Gandhi, Nehru, Maulana Azad, Patel, Jinnah, Iqbal, Savarkar, and Ambedkar. That was the age of visionaries, at least in India. These mass leaders were all driven by their vision. Very often their respective visions conflicted with each other, but nevertheless, it was a driving force for their struggle. So, what was Ambedkar's vision? He visualized, and I'm going to be a little, try to contribute my own thing to this, which we tell our students, always be bold and, test your new ideas. He visualized a civilization for India in the future that was very different from the one in its past. I would define it as Ambedkar's composite civilization state model, in which the nation state would guarantee security to its people from all forms of discrimination and suffering from material want, in which the nation state would promote education, economic well-being, harmony, peace, and respect for all fellow human beings. So, to sum up, Ambedkar said that achieving political rights is only the first step towards social and cultural change, which is a gradual and slow process of struggle towards an ideal of an egalitarian society. And we are all struggling towards that goal even today. Hence, Ambedkar is still very relevant in the 21st century as he was back then, a century ago. And thank you very much. And I'll stop my presentation here.
Thank you once again. And taking the hardship of the late night, waking up there. So, respected and honored our request to give your address. Thank you once again. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you, Professor Lakshman.
Thanks, Professor Lakshmanji. So, before our vote of thanks to the session by the director, there is a small program. I request you guys to accept our felicitations. This is our tradition, sir. Kindly accept our felicitations to this session. Thank you very much. I request to conduct this session. Now I I request that person sign and make a accept. I request Raja, he wanted to present books to the chief guest from Lata Raja Foundation.
Very wonderful things.
Thank you. So now I request Dayakar for one vote of clarity.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, everybody. It's my privilege to propose vote of thanks on the Department of History, Dr. B.R. Ambedkar University, Hyderabad. At the outset, I thank our energetic Honorable Vice Chancellor, Professor K. Sitaram Rao Garu, who is the constant inspiration for all of us and academic endeavors of our university. Thank you, sir, for readily accepting our proposal to conduct the international seminar on Ambedkar, democracy and nationalism on the eve of the Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav and completing of 40 years of our university and providing his constant support and help. Thank you, sir. I thank our chief guest, Dr. Raj Shekhar Unduru, IAS, Additional Chief Secretary to Government of Haryana, who was kind to came all along from Haryana and gave valuable address to this August gathering. Thank you, sir. We are thankful to Professor Lakshman D. Satya for delivering very insightful keynote address from USA and putting up with odd hour. Thank you, sir. I thank guest of honor, Professor Adapasundara, our beloved teacher, who given a valuable message. Thank you, sir. A special thanks to our registrar, Dr. A.V.N. Reddy Garu, who provided administrative support and other support. Thank you, sir. Thank you, one and all. I thank our esteemed Dean, young and energetic Dean, Professor Ganta Chakrapani Garu, for his constant support to success this seminar. Thank you, sir. I thank our Professor E. Sudhanarani Garu, Director, Senior Colleague in the Department of History. I'm very much thankful to you. Okay. I thank our Head Department of History, Dr. Vatanam Srinivas Garu, for his constant support and encouragement for the success of the today's seminar. I thank Gunti Ravindar Garu, Director, EMRC, Dr. Vasant Rao Garu, Computer in Charge, Dr. Venugopal Garu, PRO, and their staff who provide help for the success of the seminar. I am very much thankful to Lakshmi Prasad and their team to provide such a beautiful arrangements in the hall. I am also extending thanks to Swami to providing banners and other items to our seminar. I am very much thankful to Hina Solutions, Bangalore, for providing beautiful kit. ITS, Bangalore, providing kit and other arrangements. Thank you. I'm finally thanks to guest of honor, invitees, directors, deans, teaching faculty, non-teaching faculty, employees of the university, and also media, research scholars also. Thank you. And I'm also thanks Director CSTD for providing the auditorium for today's national seminar, international seminar. One small announcement. Now I am request Director Academic, Madam, and our colleague to felicitate our Vice Chancellor and Registrar. Sit small, sir. Please accept our invitation.
Very dynamic.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.